In the last lecture, we learned how to also pass data with the action, how to retrieve it. Now with that, we learned some of the very core concepts of using Redux. Now, if we have a look at our reducer here, there is something you will probably notice. It already has a lot of code replication, a lot of if statements. Now, there's nothing wrong with using if statements. If you like that, use that approach. But we could also use a different type of statement expression in JavaScript, the switch statement. We could switch the action type and then define multiple cases, like the increment case. Then we have a colon, so normal JavaScript syntax, and then here we could return this updated state for the increment case. And now we can get rid of that if statement. And now we can of course add more cases here. So one case for decrement. And I don't need to add a break statement because return automatically exits out of this function. We never reach this line then. Only of course if we get into this case in the first place. So for decrement, we would also return a state here. We would return this state. And now we can repeat this, of course, for all the cases. So I'll quickly add a case for adding and a case for subtracting. And of course, these identifiers still have to match the identifiers you use when dispatching actions. So the identifier you set here on the type in the counter container. And now I'll pull out the code from these if statements and add the code to their respective cases here, reformat the code and get rid of these if statements. And now our reducer is a bit leaner and a bit easier to read because it's very clear that we're looking at the action type and then we're just handling different cases. And if we don't make it into any of these cases, we always have the default return statement here at the end, which returns our either initial state, or if this was already set, the current state. This is especially important since you have to keep in mind that if we were to dispatch an action which has a type which is not covered here, we would still run through that reducer. Because whenever you dispatch something, it goes through that single reducer you have in your application. Therefore, if that reducer doesn't handle that action type you dispatched, you have to return the current state to not break your application. So with that, let's save all these files, and you will see that if you go back, it still works as before, but now with this central reducer still, but there with the switch statement.